lacrosse friends, and welcome once again to Inside the World of Box Lacrosse with Greg Beecher from Blue Squatch Productions, Adam Levy, and I. We are very excited to be back. I have had quite a morning. My wife, Carrie, has to go off to her clinical placement for nursing school. She's got about an hour and 20-minute drive, and we had 6 inches of snow overnight, so I was out clearing, and then got a good sweat going, but I had a nice face dunk. I dunked my face in ice water, and it's helped. And I decided to put on this shirt to make me think of warm and tropical climes. So I'm ready to roll. How are things in New York?
They're good. Also very sunny. We did not get 6 inches of snow here, so very happy about that. But yeah, busy in the Levi household as well. We had Preston, unfortunately, has a fever of about 100. So he's definitely going through it. Kids get sick, but other than that, we're happy. It's not as cold as it was the last couple of weeks.
How's he for doing the picks when he's got a fever? Does he just like rush through it, or?
Well, we try not to give him picks when he's not feeling great, but that'd be a good test to see if there's a correlation between how he's feeling and how he's picking.
He's going to want to power through.
Exactly.
He's a gamer. So.
Yeah.
So let's get on to the results from last week and a couple of issues we're going to address from week 9 with just 4 games, but a lot going on. We're going to pull the results up here, and you can see that Vancouver, a big win over Ottawa. The Toronto kind of crushing Calgary. There was actually a lot bigger gap until the fourth quarter, right? Mm-hmm. And then quite a game with Colorado and Rochester with another big late win, a comeback for Colorado, and Saskatchewan having a great game, the Thomas Kaisak story. So we're going to talk about some young goalies this week, and we're going to should we start with Saskatchewan, go through the Thomas Kaisak thing?
Let's do it. It was amazing.
Frank Ciliano not available because of the imminent birth of his first child. So he was off with his family, as he should be. And the backup is Thomas Kaisak, who had 4 minutes, I believe, of playing time.
Something around that. Definitely. I mean, he's only 20, but yeah, it's not a lot of playing time.
Had not played a whole lot. They tried to sign Lane Arushka for the weekend. He's been with the team. He's a Saskatchewan native, actually got his first win and his first start for the team last year. And he was not able to be signed because, and I checked with the league, Mike McClellan was great, giving me the heads up that you have to sign players. You have to send in transactions by 3 p.m. on Friday for that weekend to be impact. So if you have somebody in your practice squad, you can pull them up. They didn't have a goalie on the practice squad. They now do. They've signed Lane Rushka, but it meant Thomas Kaisak was the beginning and end of the goaltending options because Keegan Bell, a defender for the team, put on the pads because you have to have a backup goalie dressed, but he'd never even put on the pads before. The first shots he faced were in warm-up. So it was ride or die with Kaisak. He gave up 4 goals in the first 5 minutes. It did not look pretty, but he really settled in and had a great game.
Oh, it was amazing. I think when I looked up the numbers in the second half, he stopped 24 of 29 shots on goal, which against an Albany Firewolves team, which, yes, I know their offense isn't clicking the way we expected them to this year, but it's been very impressive. And he was lights out, and it was really important for him to step up when they needed him.
His save percentage was over 800 for the last 3 quarters of the game. It still wound up at 750 for the game, which is, fairly pedestrian, but he had an outstanding save percentage for the rest of the game. And he looked so good, made a bunch of big saves. They only gave up the 1 goal in the fourth quarter, but Albany had chances. He made a bunch of saves, some of them back to back. And it's always fun to see how excited a young goalie's teammates get for him. When he won, he got the water bottle shower on the turf, and he was pretty excited. And this is a guy, he's got a year of junior left with the Toronto Beaches, and he went through that whole, he's from Nepean, played with the Knights and won a Founders Cup, went to Burlington and played with the Blaze and won a Minto Cup there as the backup to Deacon Knott, who's in Philadelphia. And he's been with the Beaches, was, I believe, the goalie of the year in the OJLL.
I believe so, yeah.
Last summer, and terrific young prospect, but he played in the Arena League, and I don't know, that's a tough league for goalies. There's a lot of offensive talent. I think the defense is maybe a little bit behind, but he gave up a lot of goals in the Arena Lacrosse League. It was very little hit and miss, but he looked great in that first game and so poised to come back from those 4 goals early.
Yeah, and I mean for him to do it in his not only his first career start, but in front of those Saskatchewan Rush fans, you mentioned the word pedestrian. I would say that considering all those circumstances, when you're
Yeah.
20 years old, you got to say that's pretty impressive. And yeah, he for him to definitely bring things together in that second half when the team needed him because Albany did. They gave up a bunch of leads, but they did try and mount a few comebacks, and Kaiser said no way.
Yeah. And Kaiser, a Carlton Raven, an all-Canadian with Kufla, and a great field goalie as well. Might be a guy down the road looking at, I'm thinking, I've talked to some of the staff of Team Canada as they build their sixes program, and they're looking for, because the teams are so small, you only get like 12 guys, 11 or 12 players on a team. So Dylan Ward, Brett Dobson, clearly is going to be, one of them is going to be the starting goalie. We're pretty sure. But and actually the defender he plays in Nanaimo, Caleb Creaser, is like the third goalie for Canada in field, and he can play out. I mean, he's a runner in box, but they're always looking for a guy who can play multiple disciplines. So I don't know if Kaiser becomes involved in the sixes. I don't know, but it's interesting to see that with the Olympics coming up. He's a name to consider for that. Yep. But I mean, what a performance. We're going to move on to a team that has a pair of young goaltenders, and they didn't have a great weekend overall. Calgary losing 13-9, as we mentioned, to Toronto, and it wasn't that close. It was a bunch of goals for Calgary late. So Cam McLeod, with Christian Del Bianco out, McLeod was taken in the dispersal draft, and he's had some very good moments, but he has a .729 save percentage, 14th among the 14 starters in the NLL. They turned to Colby Bowman. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, I mean, for me, Colby has been very limited in the time that he's played. Cam McLeod has tried his best in net, obviously stepping into a very wild and chaotic situation in this unknown. As you could also say the same thing about Aiden Walsh, which we've talked about on this program. But yeah, I think that I've been impressed with every time that Bowman has stepped in, especially in this game. It really seemed like although I don't think the game was ever very close and the result was ever in question, really, I think that the times that Calgary looked like they were maybe going to play a more equal or even more dominant game was when Bowman was in the net.
Interesting with Colby Bowman. I had him as my top-ranked goalie in the draft last year, and there were actually quite a few goalies that were pretty solid draft prospects. I thought he would go after the way he'd played in Nanaimo, like basically just taking over the starting role. And I mean, he was playing there with guys like Justin Getty and Devlin Shanahan, and he just asserted himself as the top guy out there. And I thought he might be a first rounder, and he actually wound up being the third goalie picked. Nate Whittam went to Colorado at 21st in the second round. And then right after that, Callum Lever-Prera going to Georgia. And I thought Georgia there was going to take Bowman. I thought they might even take him at number 11 overall. He lasted till 33rd into the third round. I think Calgary got an absolute steal. I don't know why he dropped down there. Maybe it was just, different people see things different ways, but I thought he was the top prospect and most ready to play prospect. And I think he's showing that.
I think so too. I mean, stopping 12 of 14 shots on goal against the Toronto Rock offense that is very rejuvenated is really impressive. And we've just seen that he's not letting the opposing offenses get on runs, which I think, for a young goaltender, it shows the character and poise that they have. We were just talking about that with Thomas Kaiser, who did that against Albany. And so far, what we've seen in the National Lacrosse League, Bowman has been able to do that for the Roughnecks.
So Calgary is in Ottawa on Friday. I'm very excited. I'm going to be up having the play-by-play call for NLL Plus.
Very
Jason
exciting.
with me. I'm stoked to get up there. We've got like a ton of calls today to prepare for the game. I'm really excited for all that. And I don't know, do I ask Josh Sanderson today, who's your starting goalie?
That is, yeah, you definitely ask. You ask all the questions. Yeah, well, who knows? But you're never going to find out an answer if you don't ask. I actually just talked about this with Tom Schreiber on the Lacrosse Matrix podcast earlier this week about you miss 100 of the shots that you don't take. So
yeah. So just one point before we move on, the was it the promotion game or the plug game? You're way better than me. That was very smooth. You're like, yeah, I was just talking about Tom Schreiber on the Lacrosse Matrix podcast, which just happens to be out this week. Whereas I'm like, I'm doing the game Friday. Everyone watch. I don't think I was very subtle about it, but I'm happy. I'm excited. So
I mean, I would say that you calling a game in the National Lacrosse League is way more exciting than an episode of the Lacrosse Matrix podcast coming out. Not to downplay the Lacrosse Matrix podcast. Go check that out. Every single episode is incredible. But it is obviously a great opportunity for you, Stamper. So very excited for you.
Yeah, Shribes is a great guy. I remember we did a story on him for Inside Lacrosse magazine a few years ago, and the title was "Is Tom Schreiber the best lacrosse player in the world?" Because it was just after he really established himself in the NLL. It was obviously great in the PLL, and I was talking to him, and I told him, this is the story. Here's the question the story's based around. So the first line of the story was a direct quote. So the question is Tom Schreiber the best lacrosse player in the world? First paragraph, no. And it's a quote from Tom Schreiber. And he said, yeah, no, I don't think so. Like, I think I'm doing pretty well, but like Lyle Thompson and da-da-da. And there were lots of people who disagreed with him. I loved that opening, but it was right before the LaxCon down in Baltimore. Mm-hmm. And I went down because I hadn't met a lot of the people from Inside Lacrosse that I worked with in that, right? So I went down and met with a bunch of the guys, went to LaxCon. It was really cool. And the issue was out then with Schreiber on the cover. Mm. And a couple of the IL guys were like, "Oh my God, Tom Schreiber's over there. We should. I wish we could get a picture with him with the cover." I was like, "You want a picture of Tom with the cover?" And they're like, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay." So I go over. I'm like, "Schreiber, like he is such a good guy, and he didn't want to do. He doesn't like the attention particularly. Such a great guy though. He came and posed, holding the cover. The two of us, holding the cover, and then just him with the cover, and it was really fun. He's such a good guy. He'd be really fun to have on the podcast. So everyone check that one out.
Yeah. And I mean, for Tom, I think I guess the case against why Tom might not be considered the greatest American right now. First of all, just as a quick side note, Joe Resetarits does not get enough credit as a top American in the National Lacrosse League or in the lacrosse world. The way he's playing in the National Lacrosse League right now. He
does in Peterborough, where he plays for the Lakers. I think they get it, but maybe across the spectrum, maybe he doesn't. He's
I mean, he's only, I think, if he's on pace to go way above 100 points this year, and he'd only be like the 7th or 8th player in NLL history to have 4 or more 100-point seasons.
Yeah.
So
and it's interesting because every time Tom Schreiber gets 100 points, everyone's like, "Oh, he's got 100 points for this many times." The only other person who was, Joe Resetarits, who's still playing and still doing it.
Right. But the thing, and I had interrupted myself, is that, the thing with Tom that holds him back, unfortunately, is his injuries. He's only had 3 full seasons in the NLL out of 8 where he's played. So and we've seen that the last 2 years where he's missed at least 4 or 5 games to start the season.
Yeah, and one thing I've got a question for you guys. So with Brendan O'Neill, I mean, you potentially had Brendan O'Neill, sorry, the 2 top American players kind of now playing down there with Philadelphia. How much of an advantage is that for Resetarits as far as his stats going forward?
Okay, first of all, whoa. Pump the brakes on the 2 top American players. We're not discounting Tom Schreiber here. There's some other guys. O'Neill is he is good. He's going to be very good, but he's working his way up that list at this point. I don't know. I think it's more of an advantage to have Mitch Jones and Holden Catoni and Sam Leclerc has been great, but having Brendan O'Neill in that mix, I think helps all of them as well to just elevate that offense some more. Speaking of terrific American players.
100%. And I think especially for Brennan to get more Canadian exposure is just so incredibly helpful. So like the guys like Holden Catoni and Mitch Jones, of course, are definitely very helpful. And Brennan has gotten to live with Mitch as well and pick his brain. So I know that was incredibly helpful to him.
So one note, and I know we need to move on to our next segment, but I just get so fascinated by these things. You
having a good time, Stamper.
Yeah. Brendan O'Neill, the 2nd American player to go 1st overall, right? After Casey Powell in the NLL draft. Mm-hmm. And do we have the 3rd this year in CJ Kurse? I think so. I think he's right now. I think he's the guy.
Yeah. I mean, I got to speak to him yesterday because he is involved. He's one of 2 ambassadors for the City Lax initiative, the ground ball initiative. And I'm just going to get the quote up right here. And I had asked him about his interest in the National Lacrosse League. Obviously, Connor Kirst, who we've spoken about on the show, has been incredible in the National Lacrosse League, and Colin, his brother, as well, being drafted into the National Lacrosse League. When I asked CJ about his potential in the National Lacrosse League, he said he's definitely excited, and it's a big dream of his to play in the NLL, and he knows that his brothers have had some success there, and he loves playing lacrosse, and he really wants to be a full-time PLL and NLL guy, which we're seeing more and more from young lacrosse players, which is great to see. I actually
make it work. Let them all play everywhere.
And I spoke to John Grant Jr. about this, and he was like, it should be mandatory to have box and even sixes skills for young kids, because if that's the way the game is headed, we have to start getting them used to it at a young age.
Yeah. I mean, June's just had crazy skills that would work anywhere in lacrosse.
Right.
And he was
at any time.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's interesting. I think CJ, and he went up and played in Mimico with the Mountaineers a couple summers ago. Last year he played, or the year 2023, he played at the Laxstein when the U.S. put 2 teams in as part of their selection process, and then he was a clear, obvious choice to be on that U.S. team. He was one of their best players at the Worlds in Utica, where they had their breakthrough silver medal. He is a force coming in, and I know he's great in field too. He might be a guy down the road that to be in the discussion of the best player between the two that playing in both. I don't know. He's really good.
The way that the game is developing and Americans are diving into box more. I mean, we're just going to keep saying that over and over again. I mean, we haven't even talked about a guy because he's further down the road in Joey Spallina. Where does he end up in that conversation at some point? And you're just going to be having more and more names as time goes on.
And Spallina's in the 26th draft, I believe, and he's certainly a contender. That is a stocked draft. That is loaded. Right now, I don't think I have him as my number 1 in it, but he's in my top 3 for sure. And in another year, he could be the number 1 guy.
Well, I imagine, Stamper, we're getting pretty close to your way too early 2026 and 2027 NLL draft.
Yeah. I've got them. I need to pull some pictures, but I've got the lists for. It's not. I'm not doing particularly mock drafts. I mean, it kind of is, but it's more. Last year I called them intriguing prospects. It's prospects to watch this year, because you get a couple of years down the road. For like 26, 27, and 28, I'm doing the top guys on my list, so certainly the top handful. But then it's not necessarily the first 10 guys. I'm going to add a couple others that I think are just interesting that could develop. So there'll be a couple of interesting folks there. That might not be as well known. So I mean, it's not going to be a surprise that Joey Spallina is there and CJ Kirst and
before we get too far off topic, because we're 20 minutes into the review and kind of going into the draft section, that will be a segment at some point, I promise you, Josh, out there. Okay. And Stamper, I know that is a favorite of yours. It's honestly one of the things I look forward to most, because you have a way better inside look at the Canadian talent that's playing through the system. So I do appreciate that. But let's wrap up the results segment there from last week, and then we'll move on. So I'll let you guys wrap that up. Thanks.
Sure. First of all, I blame Adam for leading me down that rabbit hole.
I take the blame.
It's a great section. He is Adam Levy. We have Greg Beecher with us on Blue Squatch Productions and Inside Lacrosse. I am Stephen Stamp, and we're going to take a quick break and be back with ITWOBL Section 2.